Good morning, everyone. We have participants in the hearing room today and a virtual participant. I'm Jocelyn Boyd. I'm employed by the Public Service Commission. And our purpose for conducting this conference this morning is outlined in Commission Order number 2024-168. In that order, the Commission in the first paragraph basically stated that following the issuance of Order number 2022-506, the Clerk's Office received new concerns during the first 2 months of 2024 related to the timeline and the annual procedural schedule concerning Dominion Energy South Carolina Incorporated and the mandatory annual review of the company's energy efficiency demand-side management programs. The commissioners instructed the clerk and commission staff to schedule and hold a workshop for interested parties or stakeholders wanting to comment and offer possible solutions related to the timelines in the annual procedural schedule established for Dominion Energy South Carolina Incorporated in order number 2022-506. I want to continue by introducing or letting you know my PSC colleagues who are also in the room. A manager of our clerk's office, Ms. Pam McMillan, is present. Our live stream producer, who's also recording today's conference, Melissa Purvis, and our WebEx expert this morning is Jackie Knight. So, and the order number 2024-168 is also referenced in docket numbers 2023-208E and 2013, -208E and 2013-92A. So let's start with appearances, if you don't mind. And first now, appearances in docket number 2013-208E. We'll begin with the applicant, Dominion Energy South Carolina Incorporated.
Good morning, Ms. Boyd. My name is Chad Burgess, and with me today is Elizabeth Hutton. We're both in-house corporate counsel for Dominion Energy South Carolina, and we'll be representing the company today in this workshop.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Burgess. And then the interveners in docket number 2013-208E, Coastal Conservation League. Is anyone present representing Coastal Conservation League? Is anyone present representing the South Carolina Energy Users Committee? The representative for the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff.
Good morning, Ms. Boyd. I'm Chris Huber, and I'm here for the Office of Regulatory Staff. Thank you.
Thank you. What about Southern Alliance for Clean Energy? And Walmart Incorporated.
Good morning, it's Stephanie Eaton for Walmart. Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Eaton. Okay, so that takes care of our interveners and applicant in docket number 2013-208E. Let's now move over to 2013-92A. We have some listed interveners as, once again, the Office of Regulatory Staff. You're representing the Office of Regulatory Staff in that docket too, right, Mr. Huber?
Yes, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you. And then we have several participants who are, of course, not interveners in the docket. And Dominion Energy South Carolina is, of course, listed as a participant. Mr. Burgess and Ms. Hutton are present. Okay, let's see. I think that covers everything. All right, so Mr. Burgess and Ms. Hutton and Mr. Huber and Ms. Eaton, have you all already talked before this? Sometimes we have these type procedural schedule conferences and the parties or participants have already talked before we start. The PSC staff, participates. Has that happened yet?
So, Ms. Boyd, no,
Okay.
We have not had any conversations with Walmart.
Okay.
And also, we've not had any conversations with ORS about today's workshop.
All right. Thank you. So our baseline then, everybody, from order number 2022-506. Ms. Purvis, if you would display what we have on the desktop for me, please. And then we'll talk about the amended notice. Dominion Energy South Carolina asked us for more information about what we were discussing today, and we provided that in an amended notice. But this is the baseline, basically, from which we're working today. And this is order number 2022-506. The application deadline currently for Dominion Energy South Carolina's DSMEE application is January 31st. The intervention deadline is February 28th, and the intervener comments are due April 1st. Let's see what else I have. Okay. This next screen I'm showing you is the amended notice of workshop, and it contains the scope of what we want to talk about today. Utility application deadline, which of course is Dominion Energy South Carolina, and then sufficient time, we want to take into consideration sufficient time for Dominion Energy South Carolina to provide notice to its customers, an intervention deadline, intervener comment due date. Mr. Huber and Ms. Eaton, if it's okay with you, I want to ask Mr. Burgess and Ms. Hutton if the company still wants to begin with the application deadline of January 31st, if that's okay with you, Mr. Huber.
That's fine with me. Thank
Okay, no problem. Ms. Eaton, is that okay with you?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, wonderful. Mr. Burgess, where is your client's position on that?
Sure. We would like to continue to have the application deadline be due January 31st of each year.
Okay.
As we've explained in the past, the company's program year ends on November 30th. And then in that 60-day interval, that's when the company gathers all the necessary data to include in its application. Also, any adjustments that need to be made to the rate rider are obviously done during that time period as well. So it takes us roughly 60 days to put that together. I know we've talked about this in the past. I think when I went back and did my research prior to today, I know the commission has looked at this issue on at least 3 separate occasions, and they've always affirmed the schedule. We certainly would ask them to continue to do that in this instance. But 60 days is as fast as we can move to get the application prepared, given all the data that comes through the demand side management department and the programs that they're implementing and offering to customers.
Okay. Mr. Huber, any thoughts on that, at least that application due date?
No, ma'am. No, Ms. Boyd,
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Eaton?
No thoughts on it.
Okay. All right. So we can move from there. So the intent is to discuss a timeline then for, sorry, y'all, here we are. I was already there. So notes on our wall in the clerk's office, Mr. Burgess and Ms. Hutton indicate that the company needs 45 days to provide notice via bill insert or electronic notice to its customers. Okay. Is that still the case?
That's exactly right. We do the notice via a bill insert, and because the company engages in cycle billing, it will take roughly 45 days to complete all of the cycles.
Right.
So that would be the amount of time that's necessary to do a bill insert.
Okay. All right. So Ms. Eaton, you may be able to see me now. I'm looking at the participants in the hearing room can see what I'm doing, but I think you can now. So I'm looking at our big calendar. And we need sufficient time to prepare the notice internally here. Looks like the 31st in 2025 will probably still be either Thursday or Friday, not the weekend.
Ms. Boyd.
Yes, sir.
Historically, the commission has not required DESC to issue a bill insert regarding the demand side management application or petition. That's been done via a newspaper publication. Is it the commission's desire to begin requiring the company to issue notice via
I think
bill
it
insert?
is. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So obviously, issuing bill inserts is the most economical way to do that.
Right.
The other way to do it, as you know, we've told this commission before, is a special mailing. Obviously, a special mailing is a substantial effort as far as cost of printing and for lack of getting into like bulk rates on mail of a stamp. And then sometimes we do have customers who they move, we get a lot of return mail.
Right.
Sometimes they send us notes saying, please don't send this to me anymore, things of that nature.
Right.
We have offered this up in the past, but the commission didn't take us up on it. I'll offer it up again. In the fuel proceeding, as an example, the commission requires us to publish to do a bill insert in October before that. We don't know what the fuel rate's going to be doing at that time, going up or down, but we do publish the notice in newspapers. We also send it via bill insert, and then we get around to filing our testimony in February. If the commission is inclined to require the company to produce a bill insert to customers, then our recommendation would be to do that along the same lines that we do for fuel. And now what will happen in that notice, it will simply say, hey, the company's going to be, is required to file an application on January 31st of every year. There may or may not be an increase depending upon what happens. I will tell you, there's always a DSM increase because the company's always spending money in furtherance of these programs. But we don't know exactly what that number will be on a kilowatt hour basis at that point in time. So if you're, and I saw you flipping through the calendar there trying to figure things out.
Right.
The way to solve that, I think, would be to have DESC publish that notice in the fall. And then, and that way we could do the cycle billing, and then customers would know, hey, January 31st is a date there's going to be an application filed. If you're interested in that, you can find it here. And then obviously, if you want to participate, and we know some parties do, some parties don't, then you'd have, and the way the schedule works today is you'd have until February 28th to file your intervention, and then you would have until April 1 to provide whatever comments you wanted to share with the commission, and then we just kind of continue to flow through the normal schedule that we've had in place for quite some time now.
Okay. I will let them know that as option. I want to give them that option and any other options you all have, including like notice provided after you file. Does that make sense? So, okay, I have that. So we would follow basically what the current practice, where the clerk's office basically issues the notice for the fuel proceeding. So the commission would have to issue an order, not for fuel. For fuel, that's basically based on statute. For PGAs, we're using a prior commission order to notify the public.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That is correct. PGA proceedings were initiated pursuant to a commission order.
Right.
Fuel review obviously is initiated pursuant to a statute.
Yeah.
The fuel notice, or I should say, the commission issue, or the clerk's office issues the notice of filing, or a notice of filing and hearing for fuel in the fall, roughly in October. And that's when we start publishing the notice in newspapers and also in bill inserts as well. That's, as you know, fuel doesn't get really initiated, if you will, until the middle of February when the company files
Right.
its testimony, kind
Right.
of indicating whether or not there's an increase or a decrease, or if the rate
right.
stays the same. So that, I just use that. I just provide you that information as a guide as you kind of think through.
Okay.
And and I was just going to say, we've thought about other options, and this, quite frankly, is the only one that would seem to work as it relates to the possible commission's desire to begin providing customers with a bill insert related to DSM.
Okay. Are you willing to provide a proposed notice for that?
Sure.
Like this, okay.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I didn't mean to say yeah. Yes, ma'am. Sure, we are willing to
Okay.
provide a proposed notice. We would probably model that roughly along the same lines as the newspaper notice.
Yeah.
But I think the notice that would, let's say you did it in the fall, I think the notice would be, it obviously would be sufficient to let people know there's an application coming. It's going to be in January. You have the right to intervene if you choose to do so. And then also, if you do intervene and you want to file comments, you've got an April 1 deadline by which to timely file those comments.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Mr. Huber.
Candidly, now we know the concern and the issue better. Honestly, we need to take it back and discuss with my staff. And I'd like to be able to maybe file a letter and take Mr. Burgess' idea and just discuss it, just confirm we don't have any issues.
Okay.
I would like to just follow up with my staff and maybe file a letter.
Okay. All right. So we'll talk about a work date we can work with you and your team as to when deadline to file, if that's okay. Okay. Ms. Eaton.
We don't have any concern with what Mr. Burgess has proposed. That sounds reasonable. We just didn't want the interim number of days after the application before the intervention deadline and the number of days between the intervention deadline and the comment deadline to be compressed. We need it, it needs to stay that many days after the application and that many days after the intervention deadline, as it is currently set up.
All right. So Walmart Incorporated has no issue with the procedural schedule in order 2022-506.
No.
Okay. Everyone, if you would allow me just to give the commissioners the other option too, and then we'll talk about a date by which everyone can file any comments, including if you want to file, Mr. Burgess, a proposed notice. Does that make sense?
I want to make sure I follow you.
So after we talk about option B, which is the schedule similar to what happens with the Duke applications, basically. The first option, where option A for the commissioners to consider is a notice regarding Dominion Energy South Carolina's annual DSM-EE filing will be sent to customers via bill insert in fall preceding the year of the application. That notice, that draft.
Oh, sure.
Note,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
what I'm
Yeah,
talking
absolutely. We would be happy to prepare a draft notice for
Right.
the commission's consideration.
Right.
And if they're going to issue an order similar to 506,
Right.
of course, if they wanted to put a deadline in here by
Okay.
which the company would be required to provide that draft notice, I don't see an issue with that.
Okay. That's what I think what would happen still if they approve your first recommendation, Mr. Burgess, is just like the clerk's office initiates basically opening the docket for the fuel cases and PGA cases, the same would happen here. So we probably just open a new docket and begin the process just like we do for a fuel case, PGA, avoided costs, all those other ones that we do. Okay. Back now, can you all, would you all at least so that they know the impact if they treat Dominion Energy South Carolina's application like the Duke companies, because that's what happens here for theirs. There's an application, so the application is filed January 31st. I'm thinking that that's really the company needs 45 days to provide notice. So we're already into April before yeah. So the intervention deadline, I'm thinking worst case scenario will have to be days. How many? You need 45. So we're looking, I've taken care of February, March. Even if I use like April the 5th, and then we give basically 21 days from that day for intervention. So we potentially be looking at not until April 26th for intervention. And then intervener comments on here, they're due like 1 day after the intervention deadline. Okay, so here that may be April 29th. So that's pushing the schedule out maybe a month.
So Jocelyn, or Ms. Boyd, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
We've known each other for many, many
I don't
years.
get offended based on stuff like that. So.
So there used to be a point in time when the intervention date did expire after the comment deadline.
Yeah.
And in 2022, the Coastal Conservation League and the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, they brought that matter to the commission's attention.
Yes.
And they made a recommendation that be fixed, for lack of a better word.
Right.
And that's why you now see the February 28th intervention deadline. I think if the commission is not inclined, let me say this way. If the commission is inclined to require bill inserts and they don't issue the notice in the fall, then you're going to push the schedule out possibly.
Right.
And that's problematic. And it's problematic for the following reasons.
Okay.
Number one, we have other rate adjustments that are going on in the spring. And I mentioned earlier, DSM is, for all the DSM proceedings I've been involved with, it's always a rate increase. Fuel for DESC is also going on at that time, and fuel can go up, it can go down, it can stay the same. And in addition to that, we have a pension rider, and pension can go up, go down, stay the same. Okay. What we have very thoughtfully done is to ensure that those rate adjustments all go in effect
by April 1, right?
Actually, it's the first billing cycle of May.
Okay.
And that first billing cycle of May, it doesn't always fall on May the 1st. So sometimes it's fall on the 5th or the 8th, but because of cycle billing. But we strive to have them go into effect all at once. Right. And we do that because, number one, if you implemented 3 rate adjustments, let's just say you did it in consecutive months, then people are going to see their bill get jerked around, good or bad, up or down, and that causes customer confusion. It's better, in our viewpoint, to have all these rate adjustments go into effect at the same time. You're able to issue training bulletins to your customer service representatives who will be able to explain that in one phone call if a customer calls in and inquires about their bill. Also, it helps from a processing standpoint as far as programming all the computer systems that go into making the bill adjustments for customers. So we have worked really hard to ensure that those 3 rate adjustments all go into effect that first billing cycle of May. And we would continue to urge the commission to follow the precedent that it's been following now for over a decade to allow us to continue to have those adjustments go into effect with the first billing cycle of May. So that brings me back to what I said earlier. If the commission is of the mindset that a bill insert is necessary, I would just stress upon them that to adopt the recommendation that we just provided and require the company to do that in the fall, very similar to what we do for fuel.
Okay. And when we say the fall too, let me, so that I'm more specific within
October.
October.
That's right. I think
Okay.
in early October is when the clerk's office will send us a transmittal letter requiring us to produce the notice of filing and hearing for the fuel case.
Okay.
So I think if you follow a cadence similar to that,
Okay.
and you may even want to do it 1 month earlier. It's obviously it's up to y'all, but that's what we would suggest.
Okay. So I do think there is some concern. I mean, everybody, this schedule that's currently in 2022-506, and then you can look at DMS, it's public information, concern about the other 2 companies who do provide bill inserts. And that was some of the concern there, okay? Because both Duke companies are required to provide bill inserts. And so, and it's one of the reasons we're here today. And for consistency reasons is the issue.
Sure.
All right. So I think that we're able to, and we have that on our wall, we're aware internally about the fuel, pension, and DSM. I think the commission is cognizant of those requested deadlines for commission decision, Mr. Burgess. So thanks for pointing that out again. So if we may talk now about when you, Mr. Huber, think you will be ready to file any comments after you discuss what we discussed today with your colleagues, and you, Mr. Burgess and Ms. Hutton, when you'll be ready for your proposed notice and any other statements you want to provide, in your letter. And Ms. Eaton, if you have any information you want to provide the commission in writing too. What do you all want what do you want us to talk about? You need a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to file those documents?
That's a good question.
Okay.
Because
Well, I know y'all
I didn't come here prepared to
Okay.
To leave with a homework assignment.
Okay.
But that's okay. I don't think it will take us terribly too long to produce a proposed notice. We're in my mind, and I'm just thinking out loud here, Ms. Boyd, is that the notice would probably be very similar to the notice that we already publish for the DSM proceeding. We'll take a look at the fuel notice because, like I
Okay.
mentioned earlier, whenever that notice goes out, we don't the fuel notice that is, we don't know
Right.
because the
impact
because the review period
Impact
hasn't
or no impact.
exactly, and the review period hasn't closed.
Right.
The same would be true for DSM. We won't know because the review period, if you will, which
Mhm.
concludes on November 30th, all the numbers will not be known.
Right.
So I think it'll probably be similar to fuel, and we've done that enough over the years that I think we can probably put something together in pretty short order. I haven't looked at my calendar for next week to see what I've got going on at the office.
We do have a public hearing customer public hearing Thursday the 27th next week. And then
That's right. We're going to Charleston. That's
yes,
right.
and then Duke Energy Progress has a base fuel case on the 25th, commission business meeting at 11 a.m. on the 27th.
Mhm.
And so if you all don't want, the next week, July 4th is on Thursday.
Mhm.
So we can extend it to, like I said, it's up to you all, July 8th. I think we have a little bit of time because under the current order, the company still doesn't file its application until January. But we need a process in place. So
Sure. Yeah. I think if you gave us until January the 8th to get that put together.
January the 8th, you really want
I'm
January?
sorry. You see where my mind is.
July.
It started with a J.
Yes, that's right.
July 8th.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. July
Okay.
8th. I think that will give us sufficient time to put together that notice, and then we can I can get the necessary approvals internal that I need to get in order to send that to you.
Okay, and just along those lines, you could consider, stating, Mr. Burgess, maybe in that proposed notice that the company, based on that order, will file its application X date, intervene or comments, or do X date, and that type thing, because, the more, that type detail for the customer.
Totally agree. And
Okay.
I think the one thing that we probably won't have in there, well, no, I take that back. We'll also put, because currently the intervention deadline is set by commission order.
Right.
So we'll go ahead and put that date in there as well. But I don't see any issue
Okay.
getting that done in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Huber?
I was going to we push that back a couple days, maybe July 10th. I'm
that's
just
fine.
looking at my calendar when I'm out, and we may be able to file it much sooner than that. And certainly, if we've got concerns with what Mr. Burgess has proposed, we'll communicate with him and also communicate with Ms. Eaton.
Okay. Yes, the 10th is fine with me. We'll unless Ms. Eaton objects, we're going to use the 10th. Ms. Eaton?
No, that's fine. And I just want to make sure I understand what Mr. Burgess was the idea that he's raising, which sounded reasonable, was instead of waiting till January to file this notice, he's sending it with a bill insert in October, the year before the January filing, so that we could keep the current intervention deadline and comment deadline.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that
Everything you
sounds
said is
very
correct.
Yes, that is fine.
Okay.
We like that idea.
Okay. Okay, everybody. Mr. Burgess and Ms. Hutton, do you have anything else?
I would only conclude by just telling you, Ms. Boyd, we appreciate you having us over here today and appreciate the opportunity to kind of work through this issue.
Sure. Thank you for participating. Mr. Huber, you have anything?
Nothing else. Thank you, Ms.
Nothing else?
Boyd.
Okay, perfect. And Ms. Eaton, do you have anything else?
No, nothing further. Thank you very much.
Okay, everybody, just remember the July 10th, and we won't place this on the agenda because I'll need time to talk to the commissioners, so probably won't appear until like the July 25th agenda. Okay? All right, have a good afternoon, a great weekend. Thank you.
You too.